Hey guys, hoping all's well with everyone. So in this video we are going to be continuing our read-along of The Secret Zoo, The Final Fight. And last time we finished, we completed chapter 11, so we'll be starting with chapter 12 today. And I hope you guys enjoyed the read today, and let's jump into it. Chapter 12, The First Portal. My boy, Frederick, sitting in our backyard, reaching through the steel bars of the cages to pet the animals and let them eat from his hands. And me, at the window of our house, hiding and watching through an opening between the curtains. All of it is too familiar. I long to go out to him, to run through the back door and scoop him up in my arms and hold his body against mine. But it seems impossible now. The distance between us has grown too big. Frederick fixes a button on his zookeeper costume, something he wears when he imagines his worlds. Walks over to a new cage and kneels in front of it. This animal, is his favorite. Simon, the monkey from the old farmhouse. The first animal in our private zoo. I don't know Simon is my son's favorite because Frederick has told me. I know from watching. This is what my role as a father has been reduced to. Watching. Simon, playful as always, jumps to the front of his cage and sniffs Frederick's hand. Then he turns and allows the boy to gently stroke his back. The monkey, like me, longs for Frederick's touch. Go to him, a voice inside me says. He's your son. Things can get better again. Though my voice sounds like mine, I know whose it really is. My wife's. Frederick's mother. She still talks to me. I can't, I say, surprised by the sound of my voice, something that's rarely heard in the Jackson house. You can, my wife says. Go. He wants you to. But he's a boy, and boys don't know how to say these things. You're the adult. You're the father. I glance back at the window. Frederick has moved out of sight. I grabbed one of the pleated curtains and pull it back for a better view. Frederick has moved to a new spot and it's reaching again into Simon's cage, pretending to want to grab the monkey's long tail. Then he adjusts the collar on his costume. Go to him. Just play with him. You can be his father another day. Yes, this makes sense. To be his father another day. I cannot go to him. But someone else can. Someone who's willing to participate in Frederick's zookeeper game. I pull the curtain back a bit more for a better look at my son. The fabric is as smooth as velvet. An idea strikes me, and before I have the sense to stop myself, I pull on the curtain hard. One of the gold rings that attaches the fabric to the overhead rod snaps, falls to the ground, and rolls to the stop a few feet away. I tighten my grasp and pull again, harder than before. This time, 2 rings break free and clatter on the tile. I gaze out the window. Frederick seems a million miles away, lost in whatever world he's created to deal with his pain. A lost mother, a lost father. Maybe I can correct the second thing. Dink, dink. 2 more rings strike the floor. I gaze up. 1 ring left. A final tug and the curtain is free. I have the curtain on to my back and square it across my shoulders, surprised by the weight. It hangs across my body like the robe of a king. I pick up the gold ring and force it to pierce both sides of the fabric, just below my neck, a clasp to hold the pretend robe in place. I reach for the door and quickly turn the knob before I have time to think. As I head across the backyard, my walk becomes a stride, and I begin to imagine myself as somebody new. Then I stop and stand behind Frederick. Frederick turns at the sound, sees me, and falls out of his squat. He gazes up with wide eyes. Dad? He says, and to hear my name in his voice warms my heart. How long has it been since he's called me that? But I am not Dad today. I'm someone else. Someone standing on the verge of Frederick's daydreams. I'm afraid not, dear boy, I say in a voice that is not quite my own. May I ask your name? Frederick doesn't answer right away, and for one terrible moment, I fear he won't allow me to participate in his story. Then the hard look on his face softens and says, Frederick, tasting each syllable. Do you frequently travel these parts? Dad, he says, what are you... I squat beside my son. Before he can come too close to reality, I realize I don't know how to play his game, so I give him the lead. What's this creature's name? I say, pointing at Simon. Frederick thinks about it, and then says, Simon. What a grand name. Simon. Simon the Simian. The person I'm pretending to be isn't quite clear to me. Perhaps he's inspired by someone I've read about in a novel or seen in the theater. Or maybe he's little pieces of everyone I've ever met and accidentally remembered. Why the cage, dear boy? I gesture to the trees in our lavish backyard. Why not let him free? Frederick shrugs. Rules? Rulers. Frederick shakes his head as he strokes Simon's side. The monkey is standing at the front of his cage, studying me. No rules. Laws. Ah, I say. Most constricting things. Frederick smiles. What 10-year-old boy doesn't hate rules? I reach my arm out toward the cage. May I? Frederick shrugs. The closest I'll get to an invitation. As I squat beside the cage, my makeshift robe spreads out on the ground around me. I hold up my palm to show Simon I don't have anything, and that I reach into the cage. His hair is soft and smooth, and I understand for the first time why Frederick likes to touch it. Will he bite? I ask. No, Frederick says. Never. Then why not get closer? Frederick looks at me, confused. The cage. Why not go into the cage? My dad, he won't... He stares at me again and seems to remember who I really am. Then he continues anyway. He won't let me. Oh, is he afraid of the animals? Frederick shrugs. He's afraid of a lot of things. His words hurt, but I pretend they don't. Well, your father's not right here now. Should we go into the cage? How? Frederick asks. It's locked. Let me see what I can do about that. I stand and turn my back to Frederick so he can't see me reach into my pocket and take the key off my keyring. I face Frederick again, saying, This should work nicely. What is it? Frederick asks. I realize that part of him believes all this is really happening, and I remember how liberating a child's imagination can be. A magic key, I say, holding it up. It will work in any lock here. The second part is true. I'm holding a skeleton key. It's designed to fit the locks on all my cages. Frederick stands and then hesitates. He isn't sure about something. Come, I say, turning and heading for the door of the cage. Frederick follows. Seconds later, the key fits neatly. The lock loudly clicks, and the steel door swings open. Inside, I say. Quick. Frederick hurries into the cage, and I close the door behind us. His broad smile warms my heart. It's the first time I've been this close to my son in years. Simon pounces over to us. He glances up at me and begins to sniff the curtain on my back. Curious creature, I say. It might serve us to... I lose my voice. Simon has crawled up the curtain and is now standing across my shoulder, his body pressed against the back of my head. Whoa, I say. And this time, it's my genuine voice. But Frederick is laughing. Laughing. And there's no way I can turn back now. Aggressive rascal, isn't he? I've never used the word rascal in my life, but that doesn't matter to the person I'm pretending to be. Frederick claps as Simon turns around, briefly placing his hand on my head and swatting my face with his long tail. Indeed, indeed, I say in my new loud voice. What's your name? Frederick asks. For a second, I don't know who he's talking to. Then I remember that Frederick's father is not in the cage. Not really. My name. I panic because I don't have one, and any hesitation on something as simple as this might draw Frederick out of our game, which is feeling more and more like a place I want to be. I glance at my pretend robe. The edge of the side is folded over, and I can see a tag that reads, Darby Drapes. Why, I'm Mr. Darby, I say. Frederick smiles more than ever, and I see right away that Mr. Darby is going to become the friend that Frederick has been missing. Let me pet him, Frederick says. I squat, careful not to lose my balance. Frederick reaches up and strokes Simon's back. As much as a minute passes without a word between us. I become concerned when I see that Frederick has lost his smile. Sometimes I worry about the animals, Frederick says. I'm not sure if he's talking to me or Mr. Darby. Perhaps both. Oh? I say, careful not to lose the unique voice that's growing inside me. Frederick nods. It's not normal to have animals like this in your backyard. Like I said, there are rules. I hear people talking about them. He's referring to the gossip. I know because I've heard it too. It's filthy. The animals carry disease. You can't keep pets like this in Clarksville. The newspaper even printed an article against my private zoo. I see something in Frederick's face. Pain. Real pain. The kind that lingers after tragically losing someone you love. The kind that comes from wondering if you ever have done something to prevent it. I know this pain because I've felt it myself. I reach out and hold my son's shoulder and realize there is power in my grip. Not because I'm a man, but because I'm a father. Don't worry, I say. Or rather, Mr. Darby says. I'll keep your animals safe. Forever. Chapter 13. Chain Reaction. After sharing his moments, Mr. Darby was quiet for a long time. He continued to stare at the ratty curtain hanging in the display cabinet, the portal into his past. He finally turned his attention back to Noah. Noah tried to speak, but couldn't. His words seemed tangled in his emotions. All around them, fireflies continued to blink. Grab one, Mr. Darby said. Huh? The fireflies. Grab one and hold it for a few seconds. It seemed a strange thing to say after telling such an emotional story, but sometimes Mr. Darby was like that. He never wanted people to stay in a painful place for long. Noah snatched a firefly out of the air and held it in his hand, his fingertips facing up. He glanced at Mr. Darby when nothing happened. Wait, Mr. Darby said. It only takes a moment. Light started to seep out from Noah's fingers. Then he felt warmth against his skin. The light grew brighter and brighter, and then produced a heat that was too much to bear. Noah opened his fingers, and his hand seemed to burst with light. Other nearby fireflies began to glow intensely bright, and then more and more, a chain reaction working outward. Noah, squinting, held up his arms like a shield. Hundreds of fireflies followed suit, and then the light in the room slowly dimmed back to normal. Whoa, Noah said. What was that? Defense mechanism, Mr. Darby said. Something they learn to do. Fireflies don't like to be caught in and put in glass jars. You might spread the news to the children in your world. Noah nodded and watched the firefly he'd caught drift off. A few seconds passed in silence. Noah wanted to ask Mr. Darby about his story, but he didn't want to risk wiping away the smile that had found its way back onto the man's face. Still, he couldn't contain his curiosity for long. Your eyes. Does your jacket... Yes, Mr. Darby said. The magic provides what my natural body no longer can. Sight, in this case. Noah shook his head, almost unable to believe it. The secret zoo needs me, Mr. Darby said. I never thought I'd stay this long, but I can't just leave. Not with Degraff on the loose. Degraff. The shadowist. Noah suddenly realized something. You met him, Noah said. Excuse me? Degraff. Mr. Degraff. You met him when this first began. He came to your door. Mr. Jackson's door. It was after Frederick died. He came to your house and told you how to create the secret zoo. Mr. Darby slowly nodded. He was hardly the shadowist then. Just an ordinary man with a vendetta against the world. Since then, dark magic has ravaged him and made him the monster he is today. He used you, your wealth, all your resources. He used you to bring the magic to America. And the animals, Mr. Darby said. He knew of the secret society, how it was scattered in groups around the world, and he knew the type of army he could build. But how did he know you'd help him? Mr. Darby raised the back of his hand to allow a firefly to touch down on him. The firefly nestled its wings and then flashed once, twice. The story of my private zoo was big news. Degraff came to Clarksville. He came to my home and saw something other than the animals. He saw opportunity. He realized what the animals meant to Frederick, and what Frederick meant to me. Mr. Darby frowned and became quiet for what seemed a very long time. He blew the firefly off his hand with a quick outward breath and then pressed his palms together. That was when Degraff did the unthinkable. Mr. Darby turned his head and stared off into an empty part of the room. Frederick. Degraff poisoned him. He poisoned him knowing that it would ruin me. Noah felt his heart drop. But I thought... You told us Frederick died in his sleep, and the doctors couldn't figure out why. The first part was true, Mr. Darby said. The second part was a lie. The doctors not only knew how Frederick died, but I was a suspect in the investigation of his death. How? How could they think that? Mr. Darby stared at the old curtain in the display cabinet as if trying to find a memory there. People, they thought I'd lost my mind. The animals in my yard, me dressing as Mr. Darby, all signs of my madness, they claimed, brought on by my wife's tragic death. Mr. Darby looked back at Noah, and Noah thought of the old man's eyes, murky and white. He wished he could see them, wished that Mr. Darby wouldn't hide his dark glasses behind his dark glasses. In the end, I was acquitted, but I was never truly allowed to go free. My wealth, my power, people saw these things as the reason I was never brought to justice. Noah shook his head in disbelief. I was cast out by my community. I stayed indoors, alone in my empty mansion. And then I did go mad, slowly. The ghosts of my wife and Frederick haunted me, not as spirits, but as thoughts and memories, things that came alive in the endless halls of my home. a place that had become a prison. Mr. Darby reached up and touched his cheek. Noah realized he'd wiped away a tear. Mr. Jackson slowly died, bit by bit. I wanted him gone. I found myself wearing the robe all the time and spending my days with the animals. I cared for them endlessly and knew them all by name. That was when Degraff seized the opportunity he created. He came to me with stories of Banu and his magic. I went to India and learned about the zoo I could build. Another world just beyond my back door. A place where all of Frederick's beloved animals could be safe. And a place where Mr. Darby could be free. Noah could barely believe what he was hearing. He just stood and stared. Bright light began to glow from a place in his jacket, and he realized a firefly had gotten trapped in his pocket. He let it free. They'll do that sometimes, Mr. Darby said with a smile that was clearly forced. They get into a tight place, get comfortable, and can't find their way out. Noah watched the firefly go, glad for the distraction. A few fireflies near it briefly shined bright, a small chain reaction like the other Noah had seen. You should go home, Noah, Mr. Darby said. Then he led the way out of the gallery. Noah, his head full of Mr. Darby's incredible past, barely noticed the artwork and the fireflies. All he saw were images in his head. The cages in Mr. Darby's backyard, Degraff standing on Mr. Darby's porch, magic and machines slowly bringing the secret zoo to life. Then when Noah came to the exit of the room, a framed photograph caught his eye. When he stopped walking to take a better look, so did Mr. Darby. The black and white picture showed a tombstone bearing the names of Mr. Jackson, his wife, and his son. Mr. Jackson's name was the only one without a date for a death. It's in Clarksville Cemetery, Mr. Darby explained. Noah nodded. He knew the place, an old cemetery just outside his neighborhood. Mr. Darby touched his fingertips to the glass. He smiled in a sad way and said, A place I think I belong. Noah wanted to say something, but couldn't find the right words. Come, Mr. Darby said as he lowered his hand. He turned and headed out the door, adding, Let's go. They walked through the gentle firefly storm, and then stopped at the staircase to the basement. Mr. Darby said, You can find your way from here, yes? Noah nodded. After descending a few stairs, he turned and said, Mr. Darby. The old man stared at Noah, firefly light reflecting in the dark lenses of his sunglasses. Yes. I'm sorry for all that happened to you. Thank you, Noah, Mr. Darby said. But the time for sorrow is behind us. Now is the time to protect the secret zoo, once and for all. His powerful words reminded Noah of a king's decree, and this thought brought on a memory. The descenders, outside creepy critters, why did they kneel to you? The leader of the secret zoo smiled a weak smile. For a few seconds, it seemed that he couldn't answer, but then he said, I'll keep some secrets, at least for now. Noah wanted to ask more, but Mr. Darby was already walking off, fireflies jumping out from the folds in his jacket and flashing in the air. He rounded a corner and was gone. You get what you needed? Someone asked. Noah turned and saw Sam standing at the bottom of the stairs. Noah considered the question and nodded, but without much conviction. Good, Sam said. He started to leave, saying, Let's get you home. Home. Noah wondered how much longer he'd be able to call it that if Degraff succeeded. Then he ran down the stairs, trying to escape the answer that scared him most. And I will stop the video there, ending chapter 13. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video today, and I hope to see you next time in our continuation of the Secret Zoo, the final fight. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please have a wonderful rest of your day. Take good care and be safe. Bye.